I just want to tell a simple story today about one of the most godly women that I ever knew. Psalm 12 and verse 1 is a prayer, and the psalmist prays, "Help, Lord, for the godly man ceaseth." And there's a generation that is slowly passing on who really experienced God and proved God in their lives. And in our church here in Lisburn and in other churches that I know, many of the old saints who really stood for Christ, loved the Lord, radiated God's grace, prayed, sought the Lord, loved the Word, and had a wonderful testimony. Many of those saints are being called home and promoted to glory, and we're thankful for the lives that have been lived, but we do oftentimes have concern about the seats that are left empty. Help, Lord, for the godly man ceaseth. I have had the privilege in my limited experience of meeting many gracious and godly Christians who were a lot older than I was and now am, and had a wonderful impact in my life. For a number of years I ministered in Coleraine up there towards the north coast, and we had a member of our church, a saintly woman, who went to be with the Lord. She was in her late 90s whenever she passed away. She lived in a terraced house in a part of the town called James Street, and then for the last number of years of her life, she was in various nursing homes. And some of her friends from that part of the world will remember with fondness the name of Annie O'Neill. Annie O'Neill. She was a small lady. She didn't have much of this world's goods. She never married. She never had children of her own, but she knew the Saviour, and she certainly loved the Lord. And she was in a nursing home for the last number of years of her life. In fact, a couple of nursing homes. And I used to visit her from time to time. And every time I used to call with her, she'd be sitting in the corner with a smile on her face, sometimes an open Bible in front of her. And I would sit and we would talk about the things of God. And then she would often give her testimony. How as a young girl, attending many years ago, a special week of meetings for young people in a Methodist church in Portrush, she went in with some friends. She heard the gospel right there in the meeting house. She trusted the Saviour. Her life was changed forever, and she was never the same. She never had much of this world's goods, but she had the Saviour, and she rejoiced in that glorious fact. And sometimes as I was visiting, we would talk together, we would sing together. I'm sure it didn't sound too good, certainly not from my perspective and my singing voice, but a little chorus or a little hymn that she used to sing. I hadn't heard it before. I was surprised to learn that it's in her hymn book. It's number 326 in our church's hymn book. I once was far away from the Saviour, as vile as a sinner could be, and I wondered if Christ the Redeemer could save a poor sinner like me. And she would sing that over and over and over again. With all of her heart, it was so vibrant and so fresh and so real in her experience. Fast forward a few years, I was sitting in an office in Coleraine University, doing a bit of chaplaincy work there, and the phone rang. It was one of the nurses in the local hospital. She asked me if I was the pastor of that particular church. I said I was. She says, "One of your members, as you know, is with us. She's very ill. It doesn't look like she's going to make it." And I dropped everything. I rushed down to the hospital. I found the side room where she was in, and there she was, this small little woman, about 5 foot tall, or 5'1" or 2, lying on a bed with an oxygen mask on her face. Her eyes were closed. She was breathing heavily. Some of her family were gathered around the bed. I went in, I whispered into her ear. She recognized my voice. She reached up, she opened her eyes, she pulled down the oxygen mask, and she began to sing. "I once was far away from the Saviour, as vile as a sinner could be, and I wondered if Christ the Redeemer could save a poor sinner like me." And there wasn't a dry eye in that room. Small, frail woman, singing with all of her heart. The outward man seemed to be perishing, but the inward man was being renewed and strengthened in grace. Lovely thing was, she recovered from that. We had another few years with her, but what a saint of God. One of the godliest women that I ever met. I don't know about you, but I want to be remembered not as being a great intellect or a great personality or well qualified or any of those things. They all have their place, or even being the best preacher or the best pastor. I don't think that's ever going to happen, but I want to be remembered as someone who loved the Lord and someone who tried their best to live for him. One life, make it count. And maybe today you're still far away from the Saviour. You don't know Christ the Redeemer. I tell you, he can save you. He can keep you, as so many have proved and testified in their lives. God bless you. Join us again next time.